Have you ever felt like being too nice is actually working against you? Like no matter how much you give, people still take you for granted. You say yes when you want to say no. You avoid conflict to keep the peace. And in the end, you're the one left feeling drained, frustrated, and overlooked. The truth is, excessive niceness comes at a cost. It can make you a target for manipulation, strip away your freedom, and even lead you to betray yourself. But Stoicism offers a powerful solution, a way to be kind without being weak, to be respected without becoming cold. In this video, we'll break down 8 hidden dangers of being too nice, and more importantly, how to fix them. We'll explore the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, ancient Stoics who mastered the balance between compassion and self-respect. If you've ever struggled with setting boundaries, speaking up for yourself, or feeling like your kindness is being taken advantage of, then stick around, because this could change everything. Number 1. The dark side of being too agreeable. There's a dangerous misconception that being agreeable at all times makes you a good person. The truth is, it often makes you an exhausted, resentful, and powerless one. You say yes when you mean no, tolerate disrespect to keep the peace, and avoid difficult conversations out of fear of confrontation. You convince yourself it's the right thing to do, but in reality, you're just indulging in empty fears. Fears of rejection, disapproval, or disappointing others. Seneca warned of this when he said, "He who indulges in empty fears earns himself real fears." You fear minor discomforts, an awkward moment, a frown from a friend, an annoyed coworker. But by constantly avoiding them, you create real problems. Your boss assumes you can handle extra work without protest, so you get buried in tasks. Friends take you for granted because they know you won't push back. Your relationships become one-sided, where you give and give hoping for recognition that never comes. The worst part? This pattern erodes your self-respect. Every time you silence yourself to appease someone else, you chip away at your own confidence. Stoicism teaches that true peace comes from inner control, not from external approval. If you want to live with integrity, you must learn to tolerate discomfort, to say no, to assert yourself, to risk disappointing others, not out of cruelty, but out of respect for yourself and the reality that people will not always like you, no matter what you do. Being agreeable is not a virtue when it's fueled by fear. True kindness requires the courage to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable, because the alternative, living a life dictated by the desires of others, isn't kindness at all. It's self-abandonment. Number 2. Why people take advantage of your kindness. You've likely experienced it before. You help a friend move, only for them to disappear when you need a favor. You lend someone money, and they suddenly forget to pay you back. You go out of your way to be accommodating at work, and soon, you're the one everyone dumps their responsibilities onto. At first, you wonder, why does this keep happening to me? But the answer is simple. When you prioritize being liked over being respected, people will sense it and exploit it. Seneca's insight applies perfectly here. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. You fear rejection and social conflict, so you behave as if the approval of others is the key to survival. But in doing so, you make a critical mistake. You assume that kindness alone will be enough to protect you. It won't. Stoicism reminds us that people act according to their nature. Not everyone values fairness, and not everyone will reciprocate your goodwill. Some will see your generosity as an invitation to take more, not as something to be appreciated. This isn't cynicism, it's reality. Expecting others to treat you with the same level of care that you give them is a recipe for frustration. This doesn't mean you should stop being kind. It means you must pair kindness with discernment. Don't give endlessly to people who only take. Don't assume that others will value fairness as much as you do. And most importantly, don't mistake fear-based people-pleasing for true generosity. True kindness is given freely, not out of obligation or the hope of validation. The moment you recognize this, everything changes. You begin to set boundaries. You stop over-explaining yourself. You start expecting reciprocity. And most importantly, you shift from needing approval to choosing respect, both for yourself and from others. Because kindness without self-respect is just another form of self-neglect. Number 3, being too nice can cost you your freedom. Most people don't realize how much of their life is dictated by the expectations of others until it's too late. They wake up one day exhausted, resentful, and wondering why they feel trapped in a life they never truly chose. They're constantly bending, adjusting, and accommodating, not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. They say yes to avoid tension, swallow their frustrations to keep the peace, and go along with decisions that don't align with their values just to be agreeable. Epictetus saw the danger in this and warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When you are too nice, when you let the fear of disappointing others control your actions, you are no longer the master of your own life. You become a servant to external expectations, a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Your time, your energy, even your identity becomes dictated by what others need from you, rather than what you truly want. True freedom comes not from being liked, but from being sovereign over yourself. It means realizing that you are not responsible for managing everyone else's emotions. That saying no is not an act of cruelty. That standing up for yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. If you are too agreeable, you will eventually be used, whether intentionally or not. Because people, even good people, will continue taking what you offer if you never set a limit. Stoicism teaches that external validation is fleeting, but inner peace comes from integrity. You must ask yourself, do I live for myself or for the expectations of others? The moment you stop fearing disapproval and start prioritizing your own principles, you will experience a level of freedom most people never reach. Number 4, the myth that Stoics are cold-hearted. One of the biggest misconceptions about Stoicism is that it encourages people to be cold, detached, and unfeeling. Many assume that to be Stoic means to be unkind, to ignore the suffering of others, or to operate purely from logic without any warmth. But this could not be further from the truth. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic leaders, emphasized this balance perfectly when he said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." This is not a call to indifference. It is a call to patience, discipline, and self-control. A Stoic does not avoid emotions. They understand them. A Stoic does not reject kindness. They practice it intentionally. The difference between a Stoic and someone who is simply too nice lies in the motivation behind their actions. People pleasers act out of fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being disliked. Their kindness is not a choice, it is a survival mechanism. A Stoic, on the other hand, chooses kindness not because they fear disapproval, but because they value virtue. They do not give endlessly to people who take advantage of them, nor do they seek validation through self-sacrifice. Instead, they help when they can, with a clear mind and an understanding that they are not responsible for saving everyone. A Stoic does not abandon kindness. They refine it. They practice compassion, but with boundaries. They understand that being endlessly agreeable is not a virtue, but a weakness disguised as one. And most importantly, they know that true strength is not in avoiding emotions, but in mastering them. Number 5, how niceness can lead to self-betrayal. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling like you betrayed yourself, you know the cost of being too nice. Maybe you smiled and nodded when someone disrespected you. Maybe you agreed to plans you didn't want. Maybe you kept quiet when you had something important to say, simply because you didn't want to cause tension. Epictetus warned of this when he said, "If you don't control your mind, someone else will." Every time you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own truth, you hand over a piece of your autonomy. And the worst part? It becomes a habit. The more you suppress your needs, the easier it becomes to silence yourself. Over time, you lose touch with what you actually want because your identity has been shaped around making others happy. This is where Stoicism steps in, not to make you indifferent, but to make you aware. The practice of Stoicism is about recognizing when your actions are motivated by fear rather than choice. Are you saying yes because you genuinely want to, or because you're afraid of conflict? Are you tolerating mistreatment because you're truly forgiving, or because you're scared to stand up for yourself? These are the questions that separate self-respect from self-betrayal. Being a good person does not mean being a doormat. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be understanding and still demand respect. You can be compassionate without sacrificing your own well-being. The difference is intention. Are you acting from virtue or from fear? Stoicism reminds us that our first duty is to ourselves. Because if you are constantly betraying yourself to please others, you are not truly living. You are simply existing for the convenience of those around you. Number 6, why true kindness requires strength. Many people mistake kindness for weakness. They assume that being nice means always agreeing, always yielding, always prioritizing others over yourself. But true kindness, the kind that actually matters, requires strength. It requires the ability to say no, to stand firm, to refuse to be manipulated. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly when he said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop overanalyzing, stop doubting, stop waiting for permission. Just act with integrity. But integrity is not about mindless generosity. It's about conscious virtue. It's about being good because you choose to be, not because you feel obligated to be. The difference between real kindness and people-pleasing is intention. People-pleasers act out of fear of conflict, fear of disapproval, fear of not being enough. Their kindness is not freely given. It is a currency they use to buy acceptance. A Stoic, on the other hand, chooses kindness not because they need validation, but because they value character. They help where they can, but not at the cost of their own dignity. This kind of kindness requires resilience. It means being able to handle the discomfort of setting boundaries. It means being willing to disappoint people who expect you to be endlessly available. It means understanding that saying no when necessary is not an act of cruelty, but an act of self-respect. So if you want to be truly kind, you must first be strong. You must learn to operate from principle rather than fear, to give without expectation, to stand firm in your values. Because the world does not need more agreeable people, it needs more good ones. And goodness, real goodness, takes courage. Number 7. The Stoic way to set boundaries without guilt. One of the hardest things to do is set boundaries without feeling guilty. If you've been conditioned to always be agreeable, standing up for yourself can feel wrong, even selfish. But Stoicism teaches us that without boundaries, you will never have control over your own life. Epictetus put it simply: attach yourself to what is spiritually superior, regardless of what other people think or do. In other words, stop letting the opinions of others dictate your actions. If you value your time, energy, and well-being, you must protect them, even if it makes others uncomfortable. The reason many people struggle with boundaries is because they believe they have to justify them. They feel the need to over-explain, to soften the no, to make sure no one feels offended. But a Stoic understands that boundaries are not requests. They are decisions. You do not owe endless explanations for why you will not be available, why you will not tolerate disrespect, or why you are choosing to prioritize yourself. This does not mean you have to be rude or harsh. You can be firm without being unkind. You can say, "I appreciate you asking, but I won't be able to do that," and leave it at that. You can refuse to engage in toxic conversations without needing to prove a point. You can walk away from relationships that drain you without justifying your departure. Guilt is the byproduct of a mindset that prioritizes external validation over internal peace. A Stoic understands that they are responsible for their own well-being, not for making sure others are never disappointed. The moment you accept that, you stop feeling guilty for protecting yourself. And once you stop feeling guilty, you start living with real freedom. Number 8. How to balance kindness and self-respect. There's a delicate balance between being kind and being respected. Lean too far toward kindness without boundaries, and you'll be walked over. Lean too far toward self-respect without kindness, and you risk becoming cold and distant. The key is to find harmony between the two, where your kindness is intentional and your self-respect is non-negotiable. Seneca reminds us, "A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not." This wisdom applies not just to material possessions, but to relationships and social dynamics. A Stoic does not seek approval from others. They act with integrity and let the results unfold naturally. They understand that being kind does not mean being submissive, and that self-respect does not mean being unkind. The problem with people-pleasing is that it is rooted in a false belief. The idea that if you are nice enough, agreeable enough, self-sacrificing enough, people will finally recognize your worth. But Stoicism teaches that your worth is not determined by how much you do for others. It is determined by your character. And character means knowing when to say yes and when to say no. The solution is simple but difficult. Practice kindness without attachment. Help when you can, but don't expect recognition. Offer compassion, but don't tolerate mistreatment. Give, but not at the expense of your own well-being. When you master this balance, you will find that people respect you more, not because you are endlessly agreeable, but because you carry yourself with quiet strength. Because in the end, the goal is not to be liked by everyone. It is to live in accordance with your own values, to be at peace with yourself, and to walk through life with both kindness and dignity intact. At the heart of Stoicism is this simple truth: kindness is a choice, not an obligation. You don't have to sacrifice your self-respect to be a good person. You don't have to be endlessly agreeable to be valued. And you certainly don't have to fear disappointing others to live a life of integrity. The greatest Stoics understood that true strength comes from within, not from how much approval you get, but from how well you live according to your values. If you take anything from this video, let it be this: you can be kind and still set boundaries. You can be compassionate and still demand respect. And when you do, you'll not only gain the respect of others, you'll gain the most important thing of all: respect for yourself. If you found this video helpful, please like and share it to spread the wisdom of Stoic philosophy. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss future videos on Stoic living and personal growth. Thank you for watching, and I wish you strength on your journey.